Hello and welcome to Lit Illuminated. This is a space for us to talk about books. Not only the way that books inform us about ourselves, but the way that books also help us understand the world around us. And today I want to talk to you about a creative nonfiction book by Tina Makereti called This Compulsion in Us. And this is a book that I picked up here in the US. So she's an Aotearoa New Zealand author, but this book was available in the US. And I really don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I got out of it when I started reading it. Just a note on it, a lot of the work has been published in other places, but unless you're in Aotearoa, you probably wouldn't have seen them. So I know I didn't have access to those in the different literary spaces or speeches or wherever they were previously published. So having the collection in this space was beautiful and something I really enjoyed. So just adding that note in there. But what I didn't expect was to be so inspired by this book. And she kind of really helps you move into this space of what it means to be a writer. And I know there's other stories and she's discovering things, there's just weaving through, but what's so beautiful about that is that it's taking you through the journey of what it means to write those things, but it's also talking about why writers do what they do and why we look at the world the way we do and the way we move into the space, specifically in nonfiction and in memoir, although she is a fiction writer as well. And so much of it is this searching, this searching or seeking out something, whether it's about ourselves, what's going on around us, connection to our ancestors, the why of life, the why of what we do. And that often writers, especially in the memoir nonfiction space, will enter into that space knowing that they might not actually find the answer, but that there's a compulsion, love the title, a compulsion to do that. And so throughout reading this, I was taking screenshots and sending them to friends. I did a couple posts about it on Instagram of like really impactful quotes that, resonated with me. And again, it became an inspiration point. And that's why I took it a little slow. I would read a section at a time and let it sit and ruminate. I wasn't like zooming through this. So it took me a little while to go through it because I wanted to savor those moments and also reflect on about what I was reading and how it kind of continued to inform me. So as always in this space, I like to give you some quotes, and I feel like I have a whole bunch of tabs on this one, but I feel like the ones that I want to talk about today really encapsulate what I'm talking about and where this deep desire and inspiration came from in reading this. I really do feel like a lot of this was about her life, but so much it was about being a writer and being in the space of writing and why it's important, why stories are important, which is something I'm super passionate about. So the first quote I want to read to you is on page 23. And this is where she's talking about this division between fiction and nonfiction and poetry, and like how that, like what that means and what does it mean? Does it mean something? Does it not mean something? Which is interesting because I've been talking to people too recently about why they picked one version over the other to tell the story that they wanted to tell. In this, she says, how does this non-division between fiction, nonfiction, and poetry work in practice? It means that at any one moment, there are multiple worlds in our writing, multiple times, multiple versions of stories, that our ancestors are alive even at the same time that they are dead. And I love that idea that you can even layer your story through genres. You can layer your time and understanding through genres. There's a way to allow writing to be the vehicle for you to access the stories how you need to. I just love that so much. Again, so many notes in that space. And then the other one I want to read to you is on page 25. This is like the last statement of the same essay that other quote was in. And this quote is, the nonfiction page therefore becomes a place where I encounter the greater mystery of creation itself. Swoon. I just love that so much. I don't know how you can be a nonfiction writer and not be inspired by this book. And if you are looking for some inspiration in the work that you're doing, kind of getting that passion back, I'd highly recommend picking up this book.
A brief pause in programming to really offer my sincere thanks for you joining me here on the Lit Illuminated podcast, as well as all your support through likes and subscription and comments. It all matters for podcasts like this one. And I also just wanted to mention that Lit Illuminated is more than this podcast. There are other ways to get connected to literature and the way that it informs our lives. I offer workshops as well as MFA-like seminars. I do independent study as well as mentoring memoir writers. So if you're interested in getting more connected with Lit Illuminated, please check out RebeccaBeardsall.com. And thank you again for listening today.
Another quote I want to give to you is on page 43. Again, there were so many, but I tried to pick the ones that I had extra stars or extra comments around. And again, talking about the writing space, but we are always looking for what was lost, always trying to map connections. Once I thought I would be an archaeologist, but now I see that what I might become instead is an excavator of stories. Yes, I love that so much. The idea of how we study the world around us, how we study place with the mapping, with the excavation, with the exploring. And then what if you turn that understanding and make it how we work with story, how we dive into story. And this is something I talk about in this podcast, and why I think it's so important to talk about stories, is that it's not just about my story. It's not just about like what I need to say about my life or my excavation, the kind of looking through that, like my things of interest. So then I write and I tell you my story, but then you read my story, much like I'm reading this book, and then inspired by that to write your own story. And that this layering and layering and layering of stories provide that bigger, broader picture and that understanding of the world around us. But also this idea that stories everywhere. We hear stories, the myths from our family. I have stories in my head from my childhood that I don't really remember, but the family lore is X, Y, and Z, right? And so it is a story that is passed down. It's a story that's passed through the family, and it stays with you. It becomes your story that you then pass on down the generations. And this way that is also a layering. So whether it is you're writing down that story, you're absorbing that story, you're listening to the story, the layering is part of it. And then what does it mean to not only create the story, but to investigate the story, to take it in the sense of mapping, of analyzing, of cultivating, and as well as excavating that story. And there are a few spaces in here where Tina talks about like how the story of her life and her writing life, and then the connection to family, the connection to what she's understanding about self, and this constant like braiding and weaving of that in and out of time, as well as how it's all part of who she is, that they're not separate. The writer, the person, the story keeper, they're all the same, and that what they're doing in that space is so important. Again, total inspiration. It made me feel seen. It made me feel understood as a nonfiction writer. It really made me think about the power of what it is that we do. When so often when you're writing nonfiction or in the memoir space, the question is like, who's going to care about my story? Like, why is my story important? Your story is important. And this is a proof point of like, you don't know who it touches when you're authentic and tell your story and tell it from you, not how someone else needs to hear it. It's your exploration, it's your research, it's your diving into the details. It's your aha moments. It's your coming to an understanding. I think that's the other thing throughout this. We see a progression as well, which of understanding and the swirls that you take in that space of trying to understand, not quite understanding, coming to an understanding. And then in some way, it's not that it's a full understanding, it's acknowledgement of what it is and allowing it to be what it is. Uh, she just does that beautifully. I don't want to go into all the details because I feel like you're going to get so much more out of it if you read the book. But it's about her relationship with her parents and in different relationships, specifically with her father. But this idea that that's so rooted in self, parents, what does that mean? How can there be hurt and love at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all about that self discovery as well as acknowledgement and letting it be what it is. I kind of went on a little tangent there, but the last quote that I want to read to you is on page 54. I don't even remember which one this is. Oh, yeah. So this is kind of what I was just talking about, like this kind of movement that she goes through in the book. And it says, I enjoy circle around the unknowable, constantly searching for answers to questions the writer knows are, at some level, unanswerable. And that's what you get in here, this kind of, I'm going to keep searching out the answers, pulling in the questions, searching for more answers, and I'm going to take you on that journey with me. And I'm going to give you the aha moments, the beautiful moments that you're going to get, like a little like zing in your heart that you're going to go, wow, like I feel that, or oh, that's like me, or I understand that, or I feel seen. Take you on those spaces. And then other ones you're going to be like, oh wow, like I can't believe that's where you got like that's where you got to from all of this. But just really watching the author go through the journey, and this idea that in nonfiction and in writing, we love digging into those questions and knowing all along that we might never find the answer, but we're going to keep writing into it, we're going to keep working through it. And then it continues. With nonfiction, there's a tension already on the page from the moment we touch pen to page or fingers to keyboard. The tension comes from nonfiction's imperative to write something true when we don't even know if that is a thing that is possible. And when you're talking about memory and how you remember something and how someone else remembers it, this idea of, is it true? Is it not true? Trying to get to the truth, but can you get to the truth? Is that even a thing? I thought that was another beautiful quote in here that also continued to make me think about the work that I do in nonfiction, as well as remind me that this is why I do it. This compulsion in us to write, to seek, to search, to understand, to research. And then not only is it just research and seeking, it is documenting that process. What was the learning? What was the growth? Where was the step backward? Where was the step forward? And then within all of that, we have this bigger connection to the world around us, with our ancestors, with, the land, with the community that we are surrounded with. And so how we're not in this space on our own, we're in this collective. And so how do we, be part of that while also doing this searching? These are all things that she talks about in this book. Just incredible. Highly recommend it. This compulsion in us. And especially if you're a memoir or a nonfiction writer, I hope that this book gives you as much inspiration that it did give me in this space, that I just kind of felt really proud of the work I do, that it has this bigger meaning, and that I felt understood and seen and heard and recognized in these pages. And it's something I'm going to cherish for a while. And again, I've been sitting on this. I wanted to talk about it, but knowing that she just won the award for this, I felt like it was a great time to give it a shout out. So again, it's her exploring what writing means. This idea of searching, seeking, discovery, questioning, all along, not knowing where it's going to take you or how you're going to get somewhere, but knowing that the journey and the recording of the journey is important, because that is how we connect to others, how we connect to ourselves, and how we try to make sense of what's going on around us, or what around us. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Lit Illuminated. I love that you're in this space with me and that you're joining me on this journey of discovery of self through books.